The plan for today is to talk about something that I like. This will be a short video to recommend what is, in my view, the best show on TV right now. In fact, it's not much of a contest. I don't think any other show currently on air even really comes close. And that show is called Severance. And if you haven't seen the show, I'll make sure not to spoil anything. You definitely want to go into this show knowing as little as possible about it. I'll just give you the basics of the plot. So Severance, produced and largely directed by Ben Stiller, there are other directors as well, is a show following a small group of employees at a company called Lumen. In this fictional world, some sort of technology has been developed that allows a person's consciousness to essentially be cut in half, to be severed. So when they're at work, working on some very vague and mysterious project down in the basement of Lumen, they don't remember anything about their lives outside of work, and when they're not at work, they don't remember anything about their lives at work. So the work version of themselves essentially never leaves work, the non-working version essentially never goes to work. And that's kind of the setup. I'm not going to say anything else about the plot. Severance deals with interesting ideas, which is another thing that, I wish more shows and films did. When most people talk about the show and the ideas that it grapples with, what they usually will talk about is the commentary on the modern workplace. But that to me is the less interesting theme. That's kind of window dressing for the far more fascinating exploration of human consciousness. That's what makes the show interesting to me. Severance asks a pretty deep question. It's one of the deepest, really, which is, what makes you an individual person? What makes you a self? We know what makes you a person biologically, but what makes you an individual? What makes you a self? Is your memory the only thing sort of holding you together and making you one individual? The show argues, I think pretty convincingly, that if you take one person and you put them in two different settings, and you make it so that they don't remember anything about themselves in the other setting, you'll end up with two distinct personalities and value systems and beliefs. And in effect, then, you end up with two selves in one person. And if memory is the one thing holding this kind of precarious Jenga tower that I call a self together, what happens if my memory is wrong? Like, memory is notoriously unreliable. Nobody's memory is perfect, which means that every person's self is based at least partly on a fiction. You are not really the sum total of your experiences, but rather you are the sum total of how you remember your experiences. And that seems to be what the show is driving at. And maybe they're right about it, maybe they're wrong, but it's an interesting thing to think about. And any show that actually gives you interesting things to think about is a win. So whether Severance ultimately sticks the landing remains to be seen. So far, so good. And I highly recommend it. And that's it. I promise that next time I review something, it will be a thing I hate. Because all of this positivity is honestly making me a little nauseous.